Every age has its myths about money. Some whisper about hidden hands pulling the strings of governments, secret dynasties controlling the fate of nations. Most of those stories are exaggerations or outright fantasies. But behind every myth, there is a shadow of truth. And in the 19th century, one family cast a shadow longer than any other: the Rothschilds. From the cramped alleys of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, they built a financial network that stretched across Europe. They financed kings and emperors, funded wars and railways, and made themselves indispensable to governments that had once scorned them. Their power wasn't magic, it wasn't secret, it was strategy. Information, speed, and trust turned into leverage. The real story of the Rothschilds is stranger than the legend. It is not about conspiracies whispered in the dark. It is about how finance itself can elevate an obscure family into one of the most powerful dynasties in history, and how that same concentration of power provoked fear, resentment, and ultimately, decline. This is the story of the Rothschild banking dynasty, how it rose, how it ruled, and what it tells us about money, power, and the fragility of empires. The story begins in the 18th century Frankfurt, in the narrow streets of the Judengasse, the Jewish ghetto. It was a place of confinement, but also of resilience. Jews in Frankfurt faced legal restrictions, curfews, and discrimination. They could not own land, join guilds, or hold public office, but they could trade, and within those limits, some built fortunes. One of them was Mayer Amschel Rothschild, born in 1744. His family was not wealthy, but Mayer had ambition and intelligence. He apprenticed with a banking firm in Hanover, learning the business of coins, exchange, and credit. Returning to Frankfurt, he began dealing in rare coins and currency for collectors, a niche trade that brought him into contact with aristocrats. Among his most important clients was Prince William of Hesse-Kassel, one of the richest men in Europe. By securing the prince's trust, Mayer gained access to larger financial transactions. He became not just a coin dealer, but a financier, someone who could move money discreetly, lend it profitably, and repay it reliably. But Mayer's real genius was not just in making money. It was in building a dynasty. He had 5 sons: Amschel, Salomon, Nathan, Karl, and James, and he placed each of them strategically in a different European capital: Frankfurt, Vienna, London, Naples, Paris. Together, they formed a family network unlike anything Europe had seen. Other banking houses relied on slow couriers, unreliable partners, and fragile reputations. The Rothschild brothers had something different: blood. They trusted each other completely, shared information instantly, and coordinated their moves across borders. In an age before telegraphs, they built the fastest and most reliable communication system in Europe, their own network of couriers, riders, and coded letters. This system gave them an edge in everything from bond trading to wartime finance. They knew which governments were desperate, which currencies were weakening, and which armies were advancing. And no one else could match their speed. From the alleys of Frankfurt, Mayer Amschel's vision had created something entirely new: a family bank that was not one city, but an empire. The true test of this network came with the Napoleonic Wars. Europe was consumed by conflict. Armies marched across borders. Governments needed money, lots of it, to feed, arm, and pay their soldiers. But war made everything risky. Coins were heavy, roads were dangerous, and credit was uncertain. This was the Rothschilds' opportunity. Most famously, Nathan Rothschild in London used his family's network to move money for the British government. He financed supplies, arranged loans, and transferred funds to Wellington's army fighting Napoleon in Spain. While other financiers struggled with delays and defaults, Nathan's brothers could deliver gold across borders with astonishing speed. The result was profit and influence. By the time Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo in 1815, Nathan Rothschild was one of the richest men in Britain. His brothers, meanwhile, had entrenched themselves in Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt, each handling loans, trade, and government deals. The Rothschilds didn't just lend money, they changed how money worked. They pioneered the use of government bonds, loans raised from private investors rather than taxes. They created complex financial instruments that allowed governments to borrow cheaply and securely. They built relationships not just with monarchs, but with the rising middle class of investors. In the process, they became something unprecedented, a pan-European financial system run by a single family. Critics sometimes claim they profited most from war, but in truth, what they offered was stability. In a world of collapsing regimes and defaulting governments, the Rothschilds were the closest thing Europe had to financial certainty. Their word was good. Their bills of exchange were as trusted as gold. By the mid-19th century, they were not just bankers. They were power brokers. Kings consulted them. Governments courted them. Newspapers speculated about their fortune. And in drawing rooms from London to Vienna, the name Rothschild became synonymous with wealth itself. Success on such a scale brought influence and suspicion. The Rothschilds were everywhere, financing the British government, negotiating loans for Austria, underwriting French railways, funding the Suez Canal, supporting mining projects in Spain and South America. They sat at the intersection of politics, war, and commerce. This visibility made them targets. Rivals envied their efficiency. Politicians resented their independence. And anti-Semites projected age-old fears of Jewish wealth and secrecy onto the family's prominence. Cartoonists depicted them as puppet masters controlling Europe. Writers accused them of profiting from bloodshed. Conspiracies multiplied, blurring fact and fiction. Even their genuine strategies, secrecy, discretion, family loyalty, fed the image of hidden power. But the truth was more mundane, and in some ways more remarkable. The Rothschilds succeeded not because they manipulated governments, but because governments needed them. In an era before central banks, states had few reliable options for raising money. The Rothschilds provided it at scale, at speed, and across borders. Their advantage lay in three things: information, their couriers delivered news before anyone else; trust, their reputation made their bonds safe havens; unity, as brothers they coordinated in ways no partnership could replicate. Still, power breeds backlash. The Rothschilds became symbols of finance itself, admired, feared, and resented. No dynasty rules forever. By the late 19th century, the Rothschilds' dominance began to fade. New competitors emerged. J.P. Morgan in the United States, the Rockefellers in oil, the rise of central banks that took over the role of financing governments. The world was changing. Finance was becoming institutional, corporate, and global in ways even the Rothschilds could not fully control. They remained wealthy, extraordinarily so. They retained influence in European finance, and some branches of the family adapted by moving into philanthropy, art collecting, and social prominence. But their relative power declined. No longer were they indispensable to every major war or loan. By the 20th century, the Rothschilds were more myth than masters. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories inflated their past influence into present domination. In reality, their banks still existed, but their control over European finance had been eclipsed by new forces, and yet their legacy endured. They had pioneered global finance as we know it, the use of bonds, the reliance on information, the importance of networks. They had demonstrated how family cohesion could become a business advantage and how secrecy could both protect and endanger a reputation. Today, Rothschild banking still exists, though in a modest form compared to its past. The dynasty remains wealthy and respected, but no longer feared. The Rothschilds show us something timeless about finance. Power is not just about wealth. It is about speed, trust, and networks. The family rose because they could move money faster with greater reliability than anyone else. They endured because they coordinated as one. But their story also warns us. Concentrations of financial power, no matter how effective, provoke suspicion and backlash. Myths fill the space where facts are hidden, and in the end, even the greatest dynasties are overtaken by new forces. History does not repeat, but it does rhyme. In the 19th century, governments depended on Rothschild loans. In the 21st, they depend on central banks, global markets, and financial institutions. Trust still underpins it all, and trust as always can vanish. The Rothschilds were not magicians. They were not conspirators. They were financiers who mastered their moment. Their secret was no secret at all: knowledge, unity, and speed. The question is, who holds those advantages today? And when their trust runs out, Who will take their place? If this gave you a fresh perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.